Do you want your business to grow faster? Are you open to new and out-of-the-box ways to drive revenues and increase value? How do you imagine the most successful entrepreneurs and business leaders double, triple, or expand their businesses tenfold or more? The answer is deals. This is a weekly podcast featuring conversations with business owners, executives, and leaders as we reveal behind-the-scenes details that give you, our listeners, the confidence to pursue your own deal-driven growth. On the show, we discuss a huge variety of deals, everything from large, complex mergers and acquisitions to smaller deals that you can do even without significant capital. My name is Corey Kupfer, and I've been supporting deal-driven growth for businesses for 35 years as a successful entrepreneur, professional negotiator, and attorney. My goal is to help you strategize, plan for, find, and complete deals that will help your company grow faster. Welcome to the Deal Quest podcast. Let's get started. Scott Carson is a highly sought-after guest and host of the popular podcast, The Note Closes Show. He's an active entrepreneur and an expert in real estate investing, raising capital, and marketing. He speaks regularly at different events and industry conventions focused on real estate, marketing, and podcasting. He also helps thousands of investors and entrepreneurs each year create wealth through his debt-buying classes, podcasts, and coaching. A regular podcast guest, he has recently been named number 4 entrepreneur to follow in 2022 by U.S. News and by U.S. News Reporter magazine. An avid sports fan, well, you and I have that in common. He spends his free time traveling, gardening, and making memories. He calls Austin, Texas his home, and I am excited to have Scott Carson on the Deal Quest podcast.
I am honored to be here today, Corey. Just glad to give to your audience. Let's have some fun. Let's make some podcasts and memories today.
Absolutely, absolutely. So listen, we're gonna talk about a type of deal that we haven't talked about yet on this podcast specifically. I mean, Scott's got background in all kinds of real estate investing and other stuff, whatever. But his main focus is on buying notes, and that's something we really haven't covered. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. But before we get there, I'm going to take you back, Scott, to when you were a little kid growing up, maybe 8, 10, 12 years old. What did you want to be? Because my guess is somebody who buys up mortgage notes was not it at that time. But you tell me, maybe I'm wrong.
Well, so I grew up in a small town in South Texas called Ingleside, about 3,000 people. It's famous for its Mustang grapes, and the founder of the Wishbone offense actually developed the Wishbone offense there.
Okay.
Coach Emory Riddell, before he went on to Texas and the Wishbone offense got famous at the University of Texas with Darrell K. Royal. But growing up then, my dad was my hero, so I thought I'd be working in a hardware store because my parents opened the local hardware store for years. So I was kind of like that kid that did everything on the weekends, around making extra money, where it was mow lawns or putting stuff together or working with an electrician or digging ditches. I, loved working there. I was a big baseball fan. Nolan Ryan, was my hero. If you get a chance to watch the new documentary on Netflix on Nolan, do it. But, I thought if I be sports star of some sort, baseball or football would be great. But if not, I thought I'd fall back and be the next Dan Patrick on Sports Center. You know what I mean?
There we go. Love it.
Funny, went to college in mass, to be in journalism and mass comm and stuff like that, and switched about halfway through into business. And I kind of chuckle that being a podcaster, I often feel like I'm scratching my proverbial Sports Center itch by being a guest and then also hosting a regular show as well too. So that's kind of what I thought I'd be when I grew up.
There you go. It's funny. Listen, I grew up as a Met fan, and I'll show my age because I remember when Nolan Ryan was and at that time, of course, he could, he still was smoking the ball, but he didn't have the control that he got later in his career. And, it was an adventure as to when, like batters were like, all right, is he going to strike me out or is he going to hit me in the head? Not intentionally either, just, because he was wild. Yeah. And of course, as is typical of my wonderful Mets, they usually trade the people who turn out to be great and then trade for the people who are then past their prime. So, the Mets are famous for that. So this was a early example of them giving away a guy who obviously became one of the greats. So I always liked them back in the day. Any case, one more question looking back. What was your first deal of any type? It could be something small when you were a kid or early in your career. Anything that comes to mind that was a deal.
Well, the entrepreneur side of me, when you work in a small town, your dad owns a hardware store, you have always people that come in looking to get stuff done. Like I said before, whether it's they need help in rehabbing a property or laying foundation or roofing. My first deal like that really helped me build my entrepreneurial blood was I'd started doing work at the time I was in the 4th grade, not only running as a register and being able to run a hardware store, but I was actually out doing a lot of stuff where all my friends were at, going to the beach or getting in trouble. I was working on the weekends. And as that grew from the fourth, fifth grade on, it moved into junior high and high school. My friends started coming to me and asking me, hey, I need to make some money for Christmas or spring break, stuff like that. So I started implementing. So that's really kind of my entrepreneurial blood is putting my friends to work, working for me at a young age and making extra money and getting more stuff done. But I guess that would be the first thing, I enjoyed that. My mom and dad taught me work ethic in a lot of cases out there. And sure. I think when you mentioned that, that's the first thing that popped in my mind. I was just talking with a friend the other day about, he still to this day remembers me putting him to work pulling this like yard of sunflowers were like 6 to 8 feet tall, and there was like ostriches running around wild, like something on the road. And him almost getting run over 3 or 4 times by these big ostriches that were like just crazy. I said, "But you made some money." He goes, "Yeah, I made some money.
That's it. I have the same thing. I have friends of mine who remind me when I was a 15-year-old business owner, but for me, of course, I grew up in Brooklyn, which is very different. And so what I had them doing was delivering flyers door to door, like supermarket circulars, things like that, because I worked for somebody doing that. And then I got my own accounts and I hired my friends. So yeah, that entrepreneurial bug and the early idea of the fact that you don't have to only sell your own time, you can sell other people's labor.
Well, you think about it, that's how you get ahead. It's not just doing yourself, it's leveraging other people's time, whether it's employees or virtual assistants or anything else out there. I mean, that's the wealth of America. All the wealthiest have done it by leveraging other people's time.
Yep.
And helping that out.
Yeah. And expertise and all that. All right. So let's jump to it now. So now you have this focus on buying notes. You train people on how to do it as well. You've been doing it for a long time. Let's jump in. Let's talk about that. But, so what is that business model? And then I want to backtrack and talk how you got there, because I don't think people, most people I know who do anything related to this have come through the real estate end, the more traditional real estate end, right? But just explain the business of buying notes.
Yeah. So we buy, there's all sorts of debt out there. You owe money on credit card, student loan, your mortgage, your car, your credit cards. You're in the note business. You're just on the wrong side of the payment stream, paying in,
right?
Versus getting paid out. And what we do is we focus on buying mortgage debt, residential first liens and commercial first lien debt. So we get these lists in from different banks and hedge funds, primarily non-performing notes where somebody hasn't paid on their mortgage in, usually 90 days or actually like 6 years in a lot of cases. You'll see that. So the bank has this debt, or these funds have this debt that they're not collecting on, or they're kind of hit and miss. And they'll sell that debt to us at a fraction, 50 cents on the dollar. We'll just use it as a round number. And so we buy that debt at 50 cents on the dollar. Doesn't mean the borrower owes any less. They still owe the same amount, but we make our money by then reaching out to the borrowers, to the property owners, and say, hey, what's going on? What's your country western song? What happened? COVID? Do you have a death in the family, divorce? Do you get sick, laid off? Don't
right.
care what the reason that you can't pay, but can you start paying now? Give you a leg up, or we help you out of the hole? Do we need to modify that mortgage? Do we need to modify the terms? Do we, what's going to make this a win-win situation? And that's what we do, Corey, is we really try to keep people in their houses if we can by modifying the loan or just try and say, okay, you haven't been able to pay for 2 years because of COVID. Did you start paying now? Great. Well, let's move this 2 years to the back of the loan. We'll just extend your loan and make it a win-win, And so that's what we do is we buy this debt at a discount. Our number one goal is to get it reperforming, get the borrower back on track, make payments. If they make payments for a period of time of at least 12 months or longer, it's now considered a reperforming note. Instead of me, when I bought it at 50 cents on the dollar, I can now either A, hold that for great cash flow, or B, I can turn around and sell it back to the market at 70, 80, 90 cents on the dollar. And, we make cash flow. We usually got some money on the front end from the borrower, and then we got a nice back end payment. So if we bought it at 50, we sold it at 85, we made a nice chunk there.
Nice.
That works about 50, 60% of the time, get the borrower back on track. The other 40% of the time, either the borrower is signing the property over to us because they've already left. They don't want to deal with it, and we do a friendly foreclosure, or won't deal with us at all. They won't return phone calls. They won't comment, or they'll just tell us to go pound sand. Tell us they're number one in a bird, you know what I mean? And we'll foreclose and go the legal route to take the property back that way. And then when we hold the property back, then we can do what we want to it, rehab it, sell it, flip it to other investors. Most of the time we even sell at the auction. And I was talking to you beforehand. I actually got a deal right now we're working on in Houston that we're finishing up the rehab on, that we got it, 47% of value. And because we bought the debt at such a big discount, it's taken us back to about 5 months to go finish the foreclosure and finish the rehab and get it on the market.
So let me ask a question, which I happen to know the answer to, but I want to make sure the audience understands it, which is, why is it that the banks are going to sell you the notes, right? Because they're taking a big haircut, right? In theory, they can do all of the things you just talked about, right? And so why is it that a bank will, as opposed to foreclosing or trying to get it re-performing or, whatever it is, why do they do a deal with you?
That's a really great question. That's the number one question we get. Why would a bank sell us a note versus them doing it themselves? And it's all about leverage. And it's all about velocity capital with them. Every state has a different foreclosure time frame. Like in Texas, it's the fastest in the country. We got fast highways, fast foreclosures, and fast executions here, Where you're at, or where you're from, not where you're at now, but where you're from, New York, New Jersey, up that neck of the woods, New York is a 3-year foreclosure time frame. New Jersey is 2 years. California is like over a year now, to foreclose, about 18 months if it's an underneath. So the bank would rather, take their losses, sell us that debt at a discount, and they can take that 50 cents on the dollar and go back out and re-lend it out 10, 12, 13, 14 times and leverage their money in multitude of ways. Banks don't want to be in the property business. They want to be in that mortgage business and the leverage account. You also got to realize most of these banks have been borrowing money at less, 1% or less a lot of times. So if they're making a loan at 4, 5, 6%, they're not making a 4% difference. They're making a 400 or 500% return on their money. So that gives them the flexibility to take a haircut, take a bit of a loss. Especially the big, now I'm not buying from Bank of America, Chase, Citi, Wells Fargo. Those guys all want you to write like a $50 million check.
Right.
But we buy from a lot of, regional banks, smaller institutions, hedge funds, REITs. Like I made an offer in just a few minutes ago from one fund. They had 5 notes for sale. I made an offer on 3 with my bids ranging from like $8,000 to $80,000. You know what I mean? So it just varies, what kind of condition the property's in, what state it's in, how long in the foreclosure process that the bank has already started it, or if they haven't started it, what kind of estimated repairs we might need if it's vacant. And I also have to kind of evaluate what's the likelihood of the borrower to come to the table and reperform and start modifying the loans.
Right.
So we're evaluating different things. You're not going to walk into your local bank and say, hey, I want to buy notes because I heard on the Deal Quest podcast, this guy, Scott Carson, talking about it. We're dealing with like internal departments at the banks. I used to be a banker for JP Morgan Chase. I didn't even know about this. Yes.
Right. Exactly.
So, but I kind of compare it to me being you ever watched the movie The Big Short? I'm like Christian Bale's character in there reviewing tapes, reviewing spreadsheets, drumming out to Metallica in my headset, wearing shorts and a t-shirt most days. So,
yeah, I love it. And listen, I think more and more people understand the fundamentals on the way this works, mainly in large part because they watched the various shows and figured out what happened in the recession in the 2008, 2009. But, it was interesting. I remember when I was a young attorney, like I didn't even realize. And listen, there was a time when banks made a loan, they held the loan, they kept it in portfolio, right? And then they get paid back and they relend, and that time is long gone for most loans, various types, by the way, not just mortgages, right? But car loans, all kinds of stuff, credit, right? And it's been forever. And I worked in my early days as an attorney, I worked on the early mortgage-backed securities deals, and we did like a $500 million shelf registration for the Dime Savings Bank, which is no longer around. We securitized those loans back then. And then they became, by the time, everything went to crap in 2008, it was so funny because I remember we had 280-page pooling services agreements with like 60 pages of defined terms back then, and that was nothing compared to what ended up happening by the time the later deals came on the way they securitized these loans and stripped them off. But the important part for this conversation, because the whole securitization is a separate conversation, is that, banks generally are selling off these loans, the bigger banks in big portfolios, like you said, for 50 million. And it's why as a borrower, you get these notices often, that, oh, you have a new servicer. And by the way, the servicer is also separate than the owner a lot of times.
Yeah.
But sometimes when the ownership changes, the servicer changes because they use different servicer. But the point is, this is happening behind the scenes all the time, where this debt is being moved around and sold, whether it's performing or non-performing, initially securitized, or later. So you're taking advantage of that market. And listen, I love the business model where the preference, right, is that you're trying to get these loans re-performing and keeping people in their homes, right? Obviously, if that's not the case, you got to do what you got to do. So I think you said what, about 50, 60% of the time you're able to do that?
Yeah, if we're buying owner-occupied assets, about 60% of the time, we'll be able to get the borrower back on track in some sort of payment arrangement for the most part. Sometimes it's as high as 75. 60 is what we look at as our average. We can do better than that. We're doing really, really well. During COVID, it was a little tough because the government, 2 years there where a lot of people didn't make payments. We were lucky. We still had about 80% of our portfolio. They were still making payments on time during the entire pandemic and stuff like that. But yeah, it's about 60% of the time we can get back on track.
And I don't know about in Texas, but in various places there were foreclosure moratoriums, right? And things like that, and eviction moratoriums. So yeah, but listen, the thing about it is that because you're buying the way you're buying, every business is challenging. I'm not saying it's easy, but you have room there, right? To redo the loan with the borrower, say, how can you pick it up for now? You don't need to get that back, arrears that the bank was dealing with to be able to have the loan work for you, right?
No, exactly right. And a lot of times we're buying debt where they owe more than the property's worth. They're over encumbered. They owe $250,000 or $200,000. I'm not worried about that extra $50K. I'm more worried about that $200,000, and that's how we bid when we come to it. And we're not bidding on $250,000. We're bidding on the value of the house being at $200,000. So we'll bid at $100,000 to $120,000. And if we do get them back on track and they pay on time for a while, we might recover that extra $50K there above if they pay for another 5 or 7 years.
Right.
It's great. Or we let appreciation take place. Well, right now what's happened in the country, we have depreciation. We have a price correction taking place. So the fact that we buy at such a bigger discount, I won't say recession-proofs our business, but we're not sweating price drops like a lot of investors are who bought property in the last 12 to 24 months. And they're like, oh my God, my property value is going down, or my debt service coverage ratio is below 1.25 because if things are happening. So it gives us, we're really kind of excited about what's going on in the market. We don't want anything bad to happen, but we see a lot of opportunity. I mean, I'm not going to tell you here, I'm going to buy $1 billion at a time. I've bought over $1 billion in debt in my time, but we've really carved out a great piece. There's a great chunk of lenders out there. I mean, you're not going to really buy a one-off note from a Bank of America, but there's still about 5,000 other lending institutions out there, banks, hedge funds, stuff like that will let you cherry pick off their portfolio. Or they'll send you up what we call a spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet that may have 100 assets on it that, we'll make offers on 40 and get approved for 20. And by going through due diligence, stuff like that, we may end up with 5 to 10, and that's a good day for us.
Love it. Love it. Love it. All right. So let's talk about how you got here, because I'm sure, although we haven't talked about this specifically, I'm sure you didn't just wake up one day and start buying things.
No, it is an interesting story. So back in 2002, I was working for Chase Bank. I was a banker, VP at a branch location here in Austin, Texas, just being a regular banker. And I previously worked for a financial services company, Smith Barney. You've probably heard of them back in the day. They had an office here in Austin. And a buddy that I worked with there who started a mortgage company with a couple of these, I guess you say, gurus or real estate educators who are traveling the country, teaching seminars alongside some other folks. And they're teaching creative financing. Well, I was sitting there at Chase enjoying my job as a banker, number one banker in Texas. My buddy Boyd coming, he said, man, I'm starting this mortgage company with these two folks. We're slammed. I really need some help, and I trust you. And I was like, well, okay, let me talk with you. I went to lunch with them, came back, talked to the spouse. I said, yeah, this is something I want to do. Because I dabbled being a real estate investor a few years ago and fell flat in my face.
Okay.
All right. So I was a little nervous trying to be the next landlord out there. But anyway, when I remember July 4th, 2004 was my last day basically working at Chase. And the next week I was in California at the LAX Marriott and was talking about mortgages. And we were doing mortgages in about 30 states and traveling the country. And from 2004 to 2008, I basically had a 4-year apprenticeship course. While I was doing origination, my buddy Boyd on the opposite side of the office was a guy, Bob Leonetti, and a lady, Jamie Kale. They taught creative financing. They taught the note business, how to create terms, owner financing, stuff like that. They'd also been a mortgage bank, so they'd sold paper during the 80s, during the RTC days.
Sure.
So they had a portfolio that went south that, with the values dropping. So I learned the theories of buying paper. And then when everything started to hit the fan in 2007, 2008, then only were they like, you got to jump on this. This is something that doesn't come around very often. I also had a couple other investors that had funded some deals of mine on some rehabs and stuff like that they were like, oh my God, if you're in the note business now, it's a great time because everything's on sale. So When everything hit the fan in 2008, I sold my half to the mortgage company for $1.
Yep.
That's what it was worth at the time then.
Yep.
And then I just started calling the same banks that I've been originating loans for, started dialing for dollars, 50 to 100 phone calls a day, and started getting in these portfolios or tapes of assets. One from Wells Fargo Financial that was like 185 subprime loans that I paid for the first one for $500 and then flipped it for scrap metal for $1,500 the next day because it was in Detroit. Okay. I bought a note on a mobile home in Las Vegas. It turned out to be a cash flowing brothel asset, basically, ladies. Yeah. I bought I dialed for dollars for about 3 weeks to get into. I found the special asset manager at Capital One Bank.
Yep.
And they sent me this huge list, 33-page PDF of all their small balance commercial stuff. And there's so much of it was in 6-point font. I had to actually have a magnifying glass to see everything. And on it was an 8-unit apartment complex in San Diego. It was worth like $750. They were owed like $650 on it. I bought it for $375. The debt and flipped it for $35,000 profit in 30 days to another investor that ran with the deal. So I was flipping paper at first, but then I started buying stuff from my own portfolio. And now we I bought anywhere from a single note for $7 that I flipped for $5,000 all the way up to 335 notes at one time. And we worked on those portfolios, but we're constantly buying notes. We got a pretty decent portfolio. I don't do it all myself. You mentioned a servicing company. We've got several servicing companies that work for us that manage my portfolio along with attorneys in every state. And then I also have a couple of folks that work with me remotely that are dealing with most of the borrowers with the borrower outreach or contacting the counties to make sure taxes are paid and stuff like that for you. So basically I go find the deals. I talk to investors and raise capital, and then I put it in my team that handles the borrower outreach, the work that stuff, which I of course direct and say, hey, with these assets, let's go this route, these assets, let's go, A, B, or C, and let's go from there.
Yeah. So it's interesting because one of the things I talk about in this podcast generally is that there's always, no matter what kind of industry or company you are or whatever, there's always a deal you can do. And also, no matter what the economy is, there's always a deal you can do, right? And in fact, in challenging economies and otherwise challenging economies, there are certain businesses that do really, really well. And it's funny because, I've got a buddy, in fact, I interviewed him on the podcast a couple of times, Damon Gersh, this is an analogy, totally different industry. He's in the disaster recovery industry, right? So he makes money when there are floods and fires and 9/11 and, whatever. So it's a weird business because like for him to do really, really well, bad stuff has to happen, but yet he provides an amazing, phenomenal service because he helps rehab, clean out, whatever, or do all this stuff, right? So to some extent, this business or any business where there's an advantage if things, are challenged or distressed is somewhat similar. So I guess my question for you is, so you started doing this you came into this time during the Great Recession, right? The financial crisis, where there was a lot of inventory, right? Unfortunately, because people ran into a lot of trouble, which is a good thing from a business point of view. Although obviously you gotta buy right, and the market's not as strong to, maybe people are less able to have those notes become performing, right? Or and then values down if you have to flip and sell it. Then we went through this boom period, right? For 10, 12 years, whatever it was. And then we went through COVID, which is this really weird, interesting dip thing. So I'd love to talk about the business evolution and how things have flowed through that entire journey. I think it'll be very interesting for us to hear.
Yeah. So the first thing I guess we talk about is pricing. When we were buying stuff back in 2007, 2008, I wouldn't pay above 40 cents on the dollar on the value of the property at that point.
Right.
Because I was like, I'm not paying more than 40 cents. And that's got to include back tax because there was so much. If you look at Florida was basically 30% vacant in a lot of cases. 70 cents of every dollar in Florida was international money that was pulling out of God's waiting room is what we like to call the Sunshine State, right? So that was, I was getting lists in and knew, and I didn't know what I was looking at half the time. I was like, I just had so much stuff coming in, and I got lucky that I had some mentors that were holding my hands, or I could always pick up the phone and call and kind of go from there. And I just said, let's just make it happen. And I think that the biggest thing that helped me more than anything was I kind of embraced marketing and doing videos. Like if I was working on a deal, I would film a short little video with my Dell Flick camera. Remember these things here? I still got it here. And I would share it on YouTube. There's like old videos of me walking around an apartment complex here, and I'm sweating my ass off in 100-degree heat. I'm talking about the property, and that would help me raise capital for it, or help find a buyer for that kind of deal. So we saw a lot of inventory. I mean, I'm talking thousands and thousands and thousands. And those that are in this kind of niche of an industry, we always thought that this market would maybe last 3 years. Oh, like it'll be done by 2011. Well, that came in like 12, 13, 14, 15. And here's the thing is that there's always distress out there.
Yep.
Even in the best market, you look at pre-COVID, we were at about a 2.5% default rate on all the mortgages. That still equates to several million homes, several million borrowers who can't make their mortgage on time. And so as we track this stuff, when I was first buying, I was buying like 75% of the time was commercial assets, small balance apartment complexes, industrial, mixed use stuff with a little bit of residential as the banks were figuring out what the heck to do with the residential stuff.
Right.
Like Lehman Brothers going bankrupt. So their portfolio was on hold for about 5 years before they released it in 2009 and 2010 where we could bid on it.
Yep.
And that evolved. Then it became more 50-50 and then it's more 75 residential, 25% commercial. And right now it's 60% residential, 40% commercial.
Okay.
Small balance stuff is what we see on a lot of things, but pricing obviously has gotten a little bit more expensive as values have gone up.
Sure.
That's okay. We've had to evolve. I think that the biggest thing I would say for my own business model has changed. The first 2 years, I wouldn't modify anything. I was like, oh no, you're a deadbeat borrower. I'm going to foreclose on you.
Right.
And that was a mistake that I made.
Right.
Because I could have modified a lot of those homes and made cash flow immediately without having to pay attorney fees and rehab costs, and drag stuff out. And so it took me 2 years. I'm not the brightest guy. It takes a few knocks on my head to do that, playing college football. Maybe I got a few cells loose. But I learned, I was like, wait a second, it does make more sense for us. And that's one of the big things that when I'm dealing with other investors out there that come from the property side, or they like watching flip this house or, flip or flop, or like, look, you don't really own the property yet. I know you're excited about this property. You fall in love with a white picket fence. You don't own it yet. You got to do the legal action. The borrower still owes it until you go through a legal process or they sign over to you.
Yep.
So it's always a big thing when I'm talking to people. Hey, the property looks cute. It's amazing, but let's look at the numbers. You really got to stick to your numbers. And you've talked about here, any type of deal, you got to take the emotion out of it. It's got to make sense numerically, numbers wise. It's black or white. There's no gray. Is it going to make money or is it not going to make money? Well, I think does not work in our business.
Yep.
We got to look at where the asset is and what's going on in that market. And that's what kind of makes it a little bit challenging sometimes for folks. They want to just buy in like their backyard. Well, if I was just buying in Austin, Texas, I'd have gone bankrupt a long time ago because everything in Texas is a lot more expensive because, like I said, we got the fastest foreclosure in Austin. One of the hottest markets in the country the last few years.
Yep.
So this is why we leverage a lot of, a small tool called Google, realtors and teammates outside of my home area. So I don't have to go look at a property, drive by. We leverage to make things happen. And that's one thing involved. I went from basically just buying in one or two areas. Now it's 30 states roughly in most of the major markets. I'll look at some smaller markets if I have stuff there. But that's the thing is my market isn't just the one zip code or the city I am, which most people are limited to. Mine's basically 30 states. So if I see something, I can act on it and within a couple hours have a valuation or somebody putting eyes on the asset. And then I can make an aggressive offer to the hedge fund or the bank. And they have a bid within 48 hours, which helps them make a decision to say yes or no, or maybe, and go from there.
That's great. That's great. Let's take a break from the show for a minute so I can invite you to a new way to determine your deal readiness. I created a fast and easy assessment that will determine exactly how deal ready you are. Once you complete the assessment, I use your responses to identify the obstacles that are holding you back from being a deal-driven growth genius. It's as easy as heading to CoreyKupfer.com/assessment. That's CoreyKupfer.com/assessment and filling out a few multiple choice questions. I'll be checking in after the episode to see what your results are. Now back to the show. So now you also have some courses, right, where you train other people on how to do this. Well, first of all, what had you decide to do that? I've asked this question, because I just have fun with it because, listen, I train people in negotiating and I negotiate for a living, right? So I do the same thing and I know other people who do it. And you sort of one way I could phrase it is, why did you decide to create competitors for yourself?
Great question. I'm very glad that you asked that because I believe the opposite. I don't believe in competition. I believe that there's enough deal flow to go around. If I'm not good enough to make my own relationships, like I said before, There's 5,000 plus lending institutions out there that all of them have bad paper at some point.
Yep.
And 95% of people that go through a class or training of some sort, they never implement anything anyway.
That's true.
The reason I started teaching, I was literally speaking at an event in Orlando. It was a big short sale summit. And they asked me to come speak there from seeing my blogs and articles and deals I post. Hey, can you come talk about the note business? Like, yeah. So I get up there in front of about 1,500 real estate entrepreneurs in Orlando. I'm speaking about it. I get off stage and I get bombarded with people. They're like, we want to learn this. How do you teach this? Oh, do you have a class? I'm like, oh, yeah, I got a class.
Right.
Pulling out my hands. Yeah. How much? $250 for 3 days in Austin. Oh, thanks. Can you send me, like, I can't give me your card. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. So I taught a class. But do we make some money off the classes? Yeah, of course we make money. But our number one thing is we make our money off of real estate.
Yeah.
We make our money off of deals. That's the big, we close notes. We don't talk notes. Okay. And that's, I think that's one of the biggest things when you're looking at taking training for somebody is talk to the trainer, talk to the person that's teaching. And are they active in the market in today's conditions? Not something from 2 years ago or 5 years ago. There's a lot of those folks out there that haven't closed down a deal in 5 years.
That's right.
And we even have it in the notes space. I get people calling me up or hey, somebody said this. Well, that was right 5 years ago, but we haven't had those types of deals for that. So I started teaching as a way not only to, it made some money, but it also helped educate people on my deals so they were more comfortable in buying stuff. Maybe they didn't buy 20 notes like I do at the time, but maybe they'd buy one. So I could sell them a note and make a little money, but I could also get a bigger bulk discount because I could, buy 10 and sell 10 to my students. At the same time, they're getting a great deal because it's like a Sam's versus Walmart thing.
Yep.
I'm getting a better deal. My bids have more value to the asset, to the banks, because I'm submitting offers on 20, 30 versus
bigger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now this also gives me eyes and help me build a network across the country. So if I got a deal in Albuquerque, I can call Gene out in Albuquerque. Hey, Gene, I got this deal in your backyard. Would you go take a look at it? Let me know if you're interested. Great. We can work out a deal where we can partner on the deal together. Or if you're not interested, let me know and I'll make sure and let the hedge fund know what kind of crappy condition it is because we can add value to that relationship too. And so that was the whole thing. So now that's helped me. One thing that also helped too, Corey, was back in 2010, I basically sold everything I owned except my truck and my dog. And I drove around the country for what I thought would be 30 weeks turned into 3.5 years of looking at deals and with bankers and stuff like that. That helped a little bit too. But I got classes. It's the biggest bang for the buck in the industry where, I'm a big believer that if you give people the tools to succeed, you don't blow smoke up their ass. You're not upsell, that kind of crap or pitching them to death. I hate that. I like to give people the tools to go out and achieve things. And we're very blessed. We got a very high success rate with our students because we don't, hey, well, you know what? You can sign up for this, but it's going to be $25 million more for everything.
Love it.
We got some one-on-one coaching. Here's the thing. I pour myself and my students. I'm really proud today. I got a student today who closed on his first deal. He found 7 mobile home notes. He flipped them to another guy, made a quick $7,000. He's delighted. It's changed. In 2 weeks, he made more than he's made in 2 months.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then I got another guy, Cincinnati, Larry, who's makes 6 figures, enjoyed his job, but he's getting tired of that rat race. Well, the last year he's made over 6 figures and is loving life and stuff like that and looking to leave his job and just do it full time. But everybody's got a different, notes are not for everybody. I'm going to be the first one to tell you there. It's not a get rich quick thing. If you're looking for get rich quick, go play the Powerball. You know what I mean?
Right.
1.9 billion, you'll end up with 925 million. That's a good day. Okay?
Right, that's a good day. But your odds.
But it takes work like anything else.
So I love the way you opened that question. I purposely, phrased it that way about creating competitors, because I have fun with it. But basically you answered from the same place that I come from. And my listeners know this, my viewers know this, that, I come from an abundance mentality, right? There's more than enough for everyone, right? I don't shows up in whatever. I'm happy to train people in negotiating. I remember one time. So I've been a member of Entrepreneurial Organization for a long time, and EO is a great organization. It's a peer-to-peer learning organization, and you don't solicit. There's no solicitation. You end up doing business with people because you can do business, but you can't ask for it. No, you're not handing. It's not networking. You're not handing out business cards. And it's really people are so generous with their time, whatever. And and I had that experience. And I remember there were a couple of situations with lawyers who came in, right? Do what I do in the New York area, which is where I was. I mean, now I spend more time in my place in California, but we were, we have clients all over the country always, but I was a New York based lawyer. comes in and whatever. And what somebody, he's actually trying to grow his firm and he's trying to figure some stuff out. And a couple of people say, why don't you talk to Corey? And they're like, why would Corey talk to me? He's like, he's a bigger player than me, but he does what I do. Why would? And, of course, he reached out to me after people encouraged him. And I just gave him all kinds of, I didn't have a course. I just helped him out, right? Whatever. Yeah. And he said to me, I was honestly a little afraid to call. And I said, listen, I get it. A lot of people come from a scarcity mentality, and that's where they live. And in the context of scarcity, it would be crazy for me to help you out. But I come from an abundance mentality. There's more than enough for all of us, right? You doing well is not going to make me do not as well. In fact, I believe whether it's energy, karma, building relationships, however you want to look at it, it's actually probably going to help me in the long run. It's not the reason I'm doing it. It's not a quid pro quo. I'm doing it out of, a place of service. So I love the way, you're coming from it there. And then, yes, obviously it's natural. You're going to end up partnering with some of those folks. And, and I can tell in your voice, like it's just the satisfaction factor, right? When you gave those examples, those stories of your students who made $7,000 or six figures, whatever. It's just, it's a great day when you've helped somebody and you see that they've applied it.
Amen to that. And that's what I get so excited about, because I've always found that the people that are more successful, they're the more giving of time because they don't want people to make the same mistakes that they made along the way.
100%. Yeah.
It's not always that way, but it is for a lot of folks. And it's funny in this industry that I'm in, we've got some peers that have been around for a while. They come from a different mentality. They're like, no, well, Scott, your generation is all about the give. For me, ours, we don't want to give it away. I'm like, well, you can either change your mentality or somebody's going to use a tool called Google to get the hell and find the same information online somewhere. You know what I mean? So you might as well be a resource for people. And otherwise, if you're trying to nickel and dime to death, they can smell that after a while and they're going to go somewhere else. And you don't want that. I'm a big believer in every relationship has to be a win-win out there for it to be really fruitful. If only one side's winning, it's not going to be a long-term relationship. And I'm a big believer in long-term relationships that those breed values and not be just profits and sales and stuff like that, but much longer term rewards out there. And that's what we really need to take place in this world today.
Absolutely. So what are maybe the top 2 or 3 mistakes people make in the note business?
Well, I'll say just as an investing side is a lot of people make the mistakes that they don't embrace marketing right off the bat. And for us to find note deals, you've got to market to banks, you've got to market to hedge funds. We leverage LinkedIn a lot. We're dropping drip marketing campaigns, emails out to these asset managers on a monthly basis. And so a lot of people don't have the patience to follow up with that. 80% of sales comes after the 5th contact. So I tell people, you gotta be marketing, and then they also don't market to raise capital. A lot of people will only look at what's in their bank account and they're like, well, I only got like 50 grand in my retirement. I can't buy a note. Well, you can buy 1 or 2 there, but guess what? There's millions of people out there that have money sitting on the sidelines that's depreciating right now, that is making nothing, that would gladly partner with you for a 6 or 8% return on their money for 12 or 24 months, Yep. You just got to share the deals and get to where some marketing, for deals and marketing for capital, the biggest thing. And then the next biggest thing I would say is people, like I said before, they come and approach it like a fix and flipper. They're looking at the property. They're not coming from the banker's mindset, which is a little bit different.
Yeah. And I love that my listeners and viewers know that I, at least every other show, bring up the concept of the mindset comes up because I'm a huge believer in, listen, you mentioned the stat and it's true. It's true not only in your industry, it's true in other industry. Every personal growth guru, and I'm a lifelong learner, right? I've taken business growth, personal growth, spiritual growth, like you name it, right? I do it, but I do it, go apply it in my life, right? And then I'm not, some people are seminar junkies, right? And you're like, where's, you're still poor, you're unhappy, you're not in a relationship, you're out of shape, you're like, what are you doing, right? So you got to go apply it. But my point is that every person I know who is a successful trainer will tell you that 95% of the people are going to do pretty much nothing with what they're learning in that room. And maybe 3 or 4% will apply it, at a reasonable level. And then you'll have your 1 or 2% of people who really take it and run. And so for me, the game is not played. I mean, obviously skills, training, all that stuff is super important, the tools. But for me, the game is played initially on the mindset level because I don't care what you learn. If you're not going to apply it, which is a mindset thing, what's stopping you when you walk out of that seminar and you don't and you have all these notes or whatever you do, and then you don't do anything with it. That's a mindset conversation. And it's why I tout, he passed away recently, but people like Bob Proctor's work who talk paradigms. Like I'm a huge Proctor guy, you know, and many, many others. So talk a little bit about the mindset difference of the people who are successful and who aren't in this business.
So here's the thing. I want to bring up, you brought up Bob, and I got a chance to share the stage a couple of times with Bob and spend some time in San Diego with a few years back. And I didn't know that Bob made most of his money to begin with in the janitorial services.
That's right. He was a janitor.
It was a janitor. You know what I mean? So if he can clean up his shit, you all can clean up your shit too.
That's right.
But the mindset is so key because, like, we did an episode recently on the podcast talking about imposter syndrome. A lot of folks come from the corporate 9-to-5 where they're used to being told what to do, and they told, well, that's not your job, don't do it. If they do anything extra, they get penalized, which I don't understand that in the corporate world, but that's just me. But you look at the most successful people are the ones that get up the fastest from mistakes. They make the most amount of mistakes, but they learn from them. But they're also the most coachable. They listen, they soak up things like a sponge. And that's what you have to really do. I mean, everybody struggles with negative talk in our head. Everybody does on an everyday. It's a matter of how soon you can tune that out or, get that rebound figure of get knocked down 7 times, get up 8 times, and realize there's always a silver line to some things. I mean, I think if something that comes from faith in that God doesn't, for me, I'm a big believer that God doesn't give me anything more than I can't handle.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And sometimes when you want to find success, you got to grow mentally into that space first. If you want to go from making $100,000 a year to making 7 figures, you first got to get your mind right into that 7-figure business model, because it's a whole lot of different decisions and things that you're doing at that upper level basis. So I love what you said about that, because it is the most successful people you look at sales wise or whatever it is. They got the game right. They got the mindset right. They realize overnight success is like an 8-year process. Damon John, I heard him say that one time. He's like, yeah, I'm an overnight success. It took 8 years of waiting tables at Red Lobster and going home at night, working on food, sleeping on the floor. And that's one thing that I think, especially our younger generation, and I've talked to a few colleges and stuff like that, and they have this, everything is so instant gratification. Give it to me now, delivered on demand, all this stuff. And when it comes to the real world, it takes time, it takes patience, and it takes follow-up, and it takes gumption just to realize that no, because you're going to be told no a lot, but no doesn't mean really no. It means not now. And you're going to realize the more you follow up, the more no's you get, the sooner you'll get to when I was making my first batch of calls back in 2007 to banks. I was sitting in my office and the phone wasn't ringing in the mortgage department anymore. So I was calling banks, and I called 53 banks and I got 53 no's. I'm like, this is the birds. I'm not going to do this. Well, I'm going to give them one more phone call before they one more phone call. And lo and behold, I talked to this lady, Kim, on the other line. She and the president of this lending company were the last employees. As soon as she sold this portfolio and 5 million loans in Houston, she was laid off. So she was not having a good day.
Right.
But that call turned to a $50,000 profit for me. I was able to flip that portfolio, make 5 points, and split with a couple of people. I was like, aha, every no I got was worth $1,000 to me there. Okay. And so you have to realize that every, I've seen some people that take playing cards and they shuffle them up and they, 1, 2, 3, they start rolling them out one order. And when you hit like a 3 and a 3 of ace or 3 of spades, shows up, oh, you have a hit. It's kind of that process in the sales aspect. You got to go through so many of those to get a yes. And once you figure out that right ratio, then you can gamify your marketing, gamify your strategy calls, whatever it might be, to realize, okay, I need 20 no's to get a yes, and every yes is worth $25,000 or $50,000 to me. So that law of numbers is so important these days, but so many folks say just like, oh, I'm only going to call 10 banks and give up, or I'm going to get my first no, or I'm going to send my email out and I get one ugly email and I'm going to give up because this is not for me or it can't be done. And you can't do that. You want to be successful at anything in life.
No question about it. Amen. All right. So you mentioned the podcast. Tell people a little bit more about what it is. I'm sure they can find it on all the players, but give a little bit about the podcast.
Yeah. The No Closer Show podcast is our megawatt blowtorch, 725 episodes over 5 or 6 years. We were cranking them out an episode each day. Like for the first 3 years, it's kind of slowed down a little bit, but we're recranking out a new episode every day. Wow. We just surpassed the 1.2 million download mark. Pretty excited about that, but it's half the time it's me interviewing people, vendors, folks in our industry that can help them in the mindset, the business, the marketing side, or the other half is me teaching a lesson of some sort. So yeah, I'd love for you guys to listen to it, but here's the most important thing. You're listening right now. Corey is kicking ass and taking names. So you all know that here on the Deal Quest podcast. So while you're listening to this, click on over, hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed, but also scroll down a little bit, hit that, leave a 5-star review for Corey. He's kicking ass and taking names. We as podcasters, this is your opportunity to tell Corey how much you love him. So we as podcasters love to see this. So make sure you leave a review and hit that subscribe button for Corey as well.
See, now he's not only got to tell you, but he's got to give an example of how you market and how you, right, and how nobody's a competitor and it's all big up everybody else. I love that you just did that. Thank you. I appreciate it, Scott.
No problem.
So, all right, cool. So in terms of your other stuff, whether it's your courses or, investing in the business, whatever it is, websites, other contact information, what do you want to give?
So if they go to weclosenest.com, you find about everything there. That's weclosenest.com. But if you're interested in a little bit more information, I've got a special gift for you. If you go to noteweekend.com, I teach a 1-day class every third Saturday of the month. And it's normally $99. I'll give it to you guys for free. If you go to noteweekend.com, hit the sign up button, the green button there, sign up, leave your information. And then on the checkout page, just type in Deal Quest. No space, all caps, Deal Quest, no space, and you'll get the class for free. If you can't make it live, don't worry. I'll send you the replays. You can watch and learn anyway.
So appreciate that offer to our audience. That's so generous of you. All right. My final question on the podcast is always about my highest value in life, which is freedom. And for me, that means everything from freedom in the world for all people, from oppression to the reason why I haven't had a boss in decades. What does freedom mean to you, and how does it impact your life and business?
So freedom is being able to do what you want when you want. Is the best way I look at it. And everybody has a different number. Some people will say, oh, you got to have $4 million in the bank. No. If your bills are $3,500 a month, and you got $3,500 a month in cash flow coming in that you ain't going to work for, that's freedom.
Right.
So that's my definition of doing what you want when you want without having somebody determining what your worth is. Because what's so great about this country, especially where we're at right now, you can determine what your worth is. If you're working for a job, that's fine, but you have the opportunity with side hustles and the internet and starting a podcast or whatever you might want to do on the side, do a hustle, flipping stuff from eBay or, Habitat for, whatever you might see. Freedom is doing what you want when you want. And if you're not liking your job or liking your career where you're at, that's all on you. You have the decision and you're where you're at today. We're all at where we're at today because of the decisions we have made on a day in, day out basis. So you still have the decision to change your direction, change your path, and go find freedom in one form or another. And reach out to folks like Corey, myself. Hey, we're always glad to help give you counsel on what to take. Don't get advice, because you can get advice from anyone, your grandma, your uncle, Jimmy Bob, Joe down at the bar. But advice is like assholes. Everybody has one. Doesn't mean it's a good one. So seek counsel from people that are in a position or where you want to be. I guarantee you most of the time, they're going to be glad to give up a few minutes of their time to help you on that path.
Well, Scott Carson, from the moment we were on our pre-call, we said this is going to be fun, and it's been fun. Scott, thanks so much for being a great guest on the Deal Quest podcast.
Honored to be, man. Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Deal Quest, where we help you understand how deal-driven growth can be your ticket to freedom. I want to invite you to a unique way to tap into the wisdom and experience of the Deal Quest community. Join the Deal Quest Deal Den Zoom calls, a free monthly 90-minute mastermind. In the mastermind, we address all the challenges you may be facing and help support you with the opportunities that may arise in terms of deal-driven growth. You will get input not only from me, but all the members on the call will collaborate and serve each other in a mastermind format. To sign up for the free mastermind, go to www.coreykupfer.com/dealden. That's coreykupfer.com/dealden. I'll see you there. I'm Corey Kupfer. Until next week, wishing you the freedom and financial prosperity that I know your Deal Quest will bring.